Alrighty, so we are going to get started. Hello and welcome to our final Booth Camp webinar, Follow-Up Fuel, your post-show plan. My name is Christy Schmidt, and I'm the Manager of Member Education at Specialty Food Association. Just as a note, the recording of this webinar will be available after it has concluded, and it will be available on the Booth Camp website, and my colleague is going to throw that link in the chat for you. But the main event, I am so excited that I am going to have Mike Oraschewsky from Feast Food Works come in and chat with you guys about the best practices to follow up with leads from the trade show. So Mike, do you want to just take a minute, just introduce who you are, why you're here, and then we'll get started.
Sure. So, I come to the Specialty Food Association via being a brand owner. Founded TBJ Gourmet, a specialty food brand that was first to market with bacon jam back in 2013, which I launched out of my restaurant, and then eventually built a co-packing facility called Feast Food Works. So I think since I started waiting tables at 15 or 14, I've been in the food business my whole life and done everything from food service to restaurant, to being an entrepreneur, and then also a CPG food brand. And now I'm a manufacturer of not only that brand but co-manufacturing for other clients. And along that journey, the Specialty Food Association has been very intricate in my growth. Going through a similar program to this boot camp and the mentorship program that's now available through the Specialty Food Association. Back in when I started, it was a little bit different, but it had a lot of help from a lot of good people that have been there and done that, and helped us, me and my team, grow and avoid some mistakes that we would have otherwise made. We still made plenty, but we got to avoid plenty. And so I think my first specialty food show or fancy food show was in 2013, and we've been doing them ever since. So it's been a long ride.
Awesome. Well, we are so happy to have you here, and I have a bunch of questions for you. So I hope you're ready to be in the hot seat for a little bit. But just so that people know, if you do have a question, please feel free to throw that in the Q&A, and we will get to those at the end of the webinar. And so, yeah, let's get started. So, Mike, people have been to the show. They have a ginormous list, hopefully, of leads, and they're excited to reach out. When is the best time to start following them?
Unless you've been told otherwise by a buyer or a lead, the time is now. Everyone's gotten back from the show. The 4th of July is over, but we're talking emails. It's never too early to start. If you didn't take any type of notes on what their timing was, it does depend a little bit, right? Like if you have a buyer that has a review schedule, maybe just send them a note to remind them of who you are and about your brand and your products. But if you know their review, they've told you specifically, oh, we're not reviewing this category again for 18 months. Maybe you don't have to hound them, but for all those specialty buyers and anyone who has open review, the time is now. So get ready.
All right. And so if now is the time. How often should people be following up? So they send that initial email. What does that cadence look like?
Yeah. This is something I always struggled with. I do not like sales because I don't like to be pushy. These buyers came to the show to see your products. They came to learn about what's out there, what's new, what's awesome. And but they learned a lot. They saw a lot of brands and products, and it is very overwhelming. So you got to hit them right away and do it frequently. I would typically be setting up a cadence of an email per week, possibly get that a little bit faster until you're told, no, I'm not interested. I can't tell you how many times I followed up with a buyer on this super long, cautious cadence of like one email a quarter, and you know, just got them in some sort of mass email thread 2 years after seeing them at the show, and they're like, "Oh man, I love this brand. I forgot all about you." And like, or I was just really busy. I have the jar of your product on my desk, and I've been thinking about it. I'm just really busy. uh, they came to see your products, and until they tell you they don't want to hear from you anymore, you know, keep pounding them, keep telling them about yourself, keep keep putting it in front of them. They have a lot on their plates. All these buyers have more now on their plates than they ever did before. They're managing multiple categories, and everything's being consolidated. So you have to stay in front of them.
Okay. And so that brings it into another good question is how can you personalize those emails and stick out and but also not spend too much time?
Yeah, for sure. I would try to keep things brief, right? If you took notes on any type of like key features or benefits of your product that they were really interested in, certainly hit them with that. But I would keep the text of the email fairly brief. They don't. No one wants to read a full backstory again. You want to just give them the highlights of what they saw, what they tasted, what they had said that they were interested in. But make sure you do it in your voice, right? The consumer is not the only one who's looking for authenticity right now. We're all looking for it, so keep it in your voice. And the sending an email or 20 emails, I mean, that's a bit excessive, but sending 5 emails in 3 weeks, are you really taking a lot of their time? If they're not interested, you're not taking any of their time. I mean, they're gonna either unsubscribe or like throw you in the spam bucket. Like they're not, and that's not what you want. You don't want to be in that bucket. But if they weren't interested, they're not interested. So, um, you know, I think as far as their time, don't go sending samples out that weren't asked for because they've got a ton of stuff on their desk. And I mean, I've got samples from potential clients piled up behind me. I have no idea what to do if I didn't ask for any. And I'm not a buyer. These people that want us to pack for them. Buyers get even more because everybody wants to be in their store. So that's but once you have their attention, they're going to tell you how long the meeting is going to be. So you don't, you're talking about emails, voicemails. They have the choice. I can delete, I can unsubscribe, or I can respond. Right? That's not that much time.
And so are there ways that you like in the past, are there things that you did to reflect your brand personality, like in those emails that, maybe helped you or that
Yeah.
you felt just, set you apart?
Yeah, I mean, so for TVJ, the brand is pretty playful. We put bacon into a jar, people spread it on burgers and dogs. Like it's not, we don't. It's fairly pricey. It's specialty, but it's not like a bespoke olive oil. So like our brand never really had to be super professional. So my email tone, like myself, was very playful, sometimes irreverent. I did get in a habit which worked out very well. With a very few times where it didn't, where my last email in a chain was sort of like, hey, listen, like tell me, you keep kosher? Are you vegan? Like, why don't you like bacon jam? Like just either send me a simple like buzz off, or like we don't like the best spread in the world, or I just was too busy and I really want to hear from you. And that usually elicits a response from people who were very interested and don't want to miss out on like being kicked off the list. They just have a lot to do and they can't get to everything all at once. And no one ever came back and told me, hey, hold on, I'm a big important buyer at, so and so national chain. One time somebody did come back and say, actually, I do keep kosher. And do you have a problem with that? I said, no, not at all. I was just wondering why you don't want bacon jam. And I said, do your customers keep kosher? They said, no, not all of them. And I said, okay, well, you want to buy bacon jam? And they bought bacon jam.
So there you go. So in those emails too, like did you have a call to action? Like, was there
Oh,
set up a meeting with me? Like what
yeah.
was it that you asked them to do?
Yeah, so always a call to action. That's just 101. Don't leave it open ended. If you Even if you have your calendars fully open, suggest 2 times. Are you available this day, this time? That elicits a yes or no response. You want to elicit a yes or no response, not something ambiguous. I do make use of tools like Calendly, where it gives them the option to click it. That doesn't, as opposed to saying, "Hey, let me know when you're available." I say, if you'd like to have a meeting, please, click this button, and then that sort of prompts them. So is an action. Or another good one is, can I send you samples? I would love to send you samples. Where and not can I? I actually say, where should I send samples? And they'll either say, listen, I don't want samples right now because we're not doing a review anytime soon, and my desk is already full. Or you can send them here. Um, and then you have their address, and then you can send them a postcard like for Christmas if nothing materializes and you want to keep in touch, or like do any like more long-term outreach.
Okay. And so to kind of shift gears back to like that follow up, like I feel like we're naturally going back in that. So how do you triage this? So, you were talking about like these postcards, emails, like how like where do I start? Where do I
Yeah.
begin type of piece?
Yeah, I mean, that's really going to depend on where you're at as a company, a brand, and what your strategy is. Um, you know, I had a tough time with that. I thought everyone was the most important, and certainly left a lot on the table in the early years from because I was communicating with a lot of people instead of focusing on who was the most important for my company at the time. Certainly, if a buyer from Whole Foods says, "Hey, I want samples," you send them samples.
Right.
But um, you want to focus in on who is your your target customer, and if right now that's the specialty food stores that or cheese shops or stores that are in tourist areas or at one point we realized that like orchards were great orchards that had farmers markets or markets, and they were like a great place for us where we had great return customer value or lifetime customer value. And we just honed in on the like we want to find as many like orchards and like type farmer market type places at the show, and then find copycats for who was already good for us. So I can't answer the question on who is most important to you to follow up on, but there are tools that make it fairly easy to follow up with everybody in the digital age. But then your bandwidth on answering questions, filling out spec sheets, and getting them what they need, samples could also be a bandwidth or inventory issue. So you want to focus on prioritizing who's right for you right now.
So let's dig into that a little bit. So what kind of tools or CRMs are you seeing that small business, what are those tools that we can be using that are affordable and are useful and do what we need it to do?
Yeah. So, they range from, your mass emailers that are going to make it difficult to personalize unless you have like some really good skills. But you can sort of use the same tools you would use for your email marketing for direct to consumer emails, and just set up a separate bucket for different classes of wholesale or B2B customers and outreach that way. It's less personal. So not my favorite. Um, there are a ton of low cost CRMs out there, customer relationship management tools, or there's probably other acronyms for them. You don't have to pay for Salesforce or something, one of those monsters. Historically, I've used one called close.io, fairly reasonable, although I know the prices have changed. But very customizable and integrates your phone calls and texting and email, so you can sort of mix and match how you follow up. I know some of the mass emailers do that now too. but this is more of a system where you can track emails from a specific lead or specific contact. Right now, we are personally using or company-wide using a CRM called Streak, which overlays into our Gmail. Super low cost. I just got tired of having an inbox in my CRM that didn't always line up with my inbox in my Gmail. So if they weren't in the CRM, I would miss the email in my Gmail if I spent all day in the CRM, and vice versa. I would go clear a bunch of emails in my mail application, and then my CRM would still have alerts from all the people I already spoke to because it didn't track. Streak is pretty cool because it just sits over top of your Gmail as a different way to view your Gmail, and you can put people in buckets and that create workflows. And I think it's like $50 a month per seat, which it's not nothing, but compared to the big ones, just do your research and see what works for you and what's compatible with the other systems you're using. But I do recommend some sort of tool, especially if if you're using tools like the lead scanner at the fancy food shows. Like that's what it's made for, right? You get all this data. There's a lot in there. You might have added extra, questions or data points that weren't in there natively when you customized it. Like you want to put that somewhere and make use of it. So I do like to use a CRM that can sort of filter based on type of client, or type of retailer, food service, grocery store, specialty store, and then sort of where my contact is in the buying cycle.
Okay. And so to dig in a little bit more on like those tags and things like it, what you keep in the CRM. So great for phone numbers, emails, all of that. But what about notes? So say that you had a great conversation with a buyer
Oh,
at
for
the
sure.
show. Yeah. Like are there some best practices around putting that kind of stuff in your CRM to?
Yeah, I mean, you want to keep so some people, my first hire at TBJ remembered every detail about everything. He tell you every baseball player and their stats going back to like the beginning of time, and same thing with like people he met at fancy food. I don't remember anything. I'm terrible with names. I can remember faces and remember like emotions about a face, but like I don't. It's very difficult for me. So note taking in the CRM, you want to hit them with what you talked about. It's very important. They met a lot of people. You met a lot of people. You want to jog their memory. So taking notes on sort of the emotional things that are in the margin, that you talked about, maybe personal things, and then try to get at least for me, I try to get as much in like set data columns or options that are things that would be ubiquitous, like number of stores. Like I'm not going to put that in the notes. I have an entry for number of stores. If it's a contact, what buying department are they in? For my brand, we would try to sell to the grocery, the meat, especially cheese buyer. We would try to sell to any buyer. You might have met the dairy buyer, but your product is a fresh produce and or chocolate, and that you're trying to talk to that person about how to get to that right buyer because they sit next to each other, and you talked about that in your notes, or you have that in your notes. Things like who their distributor is. That's something I would keep not in my notes. I would take a note, but I would move that over to a set data point that I could filter for in my CRM, that would let me easily say, oh, look, I have 10 customers that are all buying from the same, KeHE distribution center out of, Chicago, Romeoville. Is that maybe that's enough for me to get into that KeHE warehouse? Let me talk to them and see what their volume might be. And then maybe contact the person I met from KeHE or the distributor and say, hey, we have these stores, they're ready to buy, and we would like distribution there. So filtering on those sort of data points, is important, and I like to slice and dice data on a lot of different ways.
Sure. And I think that this data also lends itself to helping you personalize those emails just a little bit, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. So you can certainly, especially when you're using email templates, that's another big part of CRMs or any of these tools is, you want to have a personal touch, but you don't have to retype everything every single time. So if you can make templates that sort of fit to different buyer profiles and then color them with the personal stuff from the notes, if applicable. Um, uh, yeah, I certainly don't want to speak to the category buyer from Whole Foods the same way I would a owner operator of a specialty cheese shop. Not that yeah, I like one more than the other, or one's more important than the other. To us, every customer is important, but they have different motivations, and they have different buying cycles, and they have different levels of authority, and the timeline's different. Like if you're trying to build business now, you can't load into 500 stores in a month. Even if they say we want it now, it's still going to take time to set everything up, get it to distribution. So you want to speak to where they're at and what their motivations are for purchasing your products.
Right. So, and you mentioned too, looking at these data points. So you mentioned, like if people were like the Keiki warehouse, an app, like you also mentioned apple orchard. So you have all of these data points. How do you start looking at that? How do you start looking for those trends?
That's a good question. Sometimes they're hard. They get buried through different systems. So depending on what you're using, whether it's the CRM and how you're tracking sales, or I know there's like, if you're using a accounting software like QBO or similar, you can tag differently in different systems, right? So you have to figure out where you want to see who is buying most frequently with the least amount of effort from you at the best margin, right? And what we always do is try to classify customers into A, B, and C. So A were ones that we had a great margin because they were either buying direct or had a little hassle, and they were repeat buying over and over again and trying to determine the trends based on all these data points that we collected. Maybe it's geography. Maybe it's some of our products did very well in the South that didn't like some of the flavor variants were better in the South, like surprisingly, because they weren't spicy or anything. And other ones did well in the North. So we would sort of focus on that based on some of these trends. And type of store, the sales volume of the store, the demographics in the area, the overall region, and then also like how frequently they're buying and what volume.
So it sounds like there's so much strategy that's behind all of this. Like it's not just I have a list of leads and I'm just going to send out these emails. So you're kind of going around this idea of like readiness and capacity, right? Am I ready to reach out to these people? So how do you decide that?
Again, it's what's where you're at, what's your strategy. When I started, we went, anyone who said they wanted the product, we're like, yes. And we would chase leads all over the country. And then I would, I had, landed pricing. Well, that didn't work very well for me when I'm sending cases to California. Do you want is your strategy to take over every independent store in your area, or is it to get into one specific retailer that has other retailers that you're interested in have FOMO, fear of missing out if it's in this store that they have to have it? Like, what's your strategy? I never had one. I was sold to anyone and everywhere, and it created a ton of extra work because we were had low volume in every region, and made it difficult to get brokers regionally because we didn't have enough. Made it difficult to get distributors regionally until we were able to crack a national account with essentially brute force and being like fun at the specialty at the fancy food show repeatedly. And it it's all depending on your brand and where you want to go and what you see your path. And if you don't have that, right, and if you don't have the CRM that you can slice into this data, it doesn't mean you should stop. You should not fire out the emails, right? You can. This is just maybe a way that's slightly more efficient. But the first step is getting out there and continuing to touch them over and over and over again until they say, stop it. I don't like it. I'm not interested. Because there's no other way you're going to know.
Right. So then I think the other big question that comes out of all of this is, was it worth it? So how do you, what are, do you have some metrics that you track for
Yeah.
like return on investment? What does that look like? And do you have any advice for businesses that are trying to figure out their own metrics?
Yeah, sure. It's tough. The fancy food show is not a selling show. It's not like going to the farmer's market or a holiday market where you're selling direct to consumer. It's not even like going to a distributor show where you're clocking orders right there. But it has a greater overall impact, in my opinion. And this question always came up. Well, is it worth it? It's a lot of money, so much time. We printed all these flyers and we only, we printed 10,000. I mean, like we would always print thousands because like, I don't know why. And then we change something and have to scrap half of them. So I came up with a formula that worked for us, right? It was the lifetime value of a customer and the value of a lead. And so how many leads did we get that were qualified, right? It wasn't if somebody came and it was like another vendor and I just, we weren't going to count them. And then the lifetime value of a customer, and we put like a 6-month window. Sometimes we had it at a 3-month window after the show. And then the actual sales that were done in that same period that were from the show, right? So it wasn't just like what we sold in the 6 months after the specialty food show, but also the lifetime value. And we came up with a formula that worked for us, that always made it seem, and I believe, it was always a very valuable and a good ROI. And I don't know that works for everybody, right? There's a reason we go back. Some of the big guys go back because they got to show up and like show face, right? But for the smaller brands like mine, and I'm assuming most of the folks who are listening to this, it's a real question. Like, how do I best use my capital? And you can go off your gut like we did for years, or then we made a system that told us that it was valuable. And every time we always want to go back.
Data. Gut and data. So, and you mentioned though, you said 6 months, like you were tracking sales for 6 months after the show. So this isn't like an immediate thing.
Yeah, I mean, listen, now it's even easier to get immediate with like things like Mabel and Fair.com. And if you're on like any of the other drop ship platforms like Cisco or US Foods have drop ship programs now, you can start to see sales come in right away. And that was a huge, and Chrissy, I forgot to mention it, very important data point that we always keep in our CRM is where do we first meet the lead and where have we seen them at? So sometimes we'll merge those, but it's easy to tell because like I think in my CRM, I have SFFS 13 and then winter fancy food WFFS 13 and then 14, 15. So if I can see all the places we've seen this lead, and maybe I have, KHE Summer Show, 2022. So I can see where I've seen and talk to either the contact and or somebody from the company and see where the origin of that conversation started and where the relationship started. And then I would attribute that to that sort of the ROI calculator per show. But yeah, like some of the buyers, I mean, my buyer for Albertsons, they're not reviewing our category. They reviewed in like August of last year, not reviewing again for till 2027 to 2027. So it's like that's a really long lead time if you met them this year and that they're your buyer and that's their category. But the beauty of the show is that there's, it's everyone, right? There's food service buyers that are, and restaurants are ready to go now, unless they're, big chain. There's all the independents, there's all the co-ops, and then there's larger, regional stores that do make buying decisions like out of cycle, and then there's the ones that have these longer lead times. So the show's always made sense to us from an ROI standpoint, based just off of what we were doing in that shorter lead time. That might be different for every brand, right? And every product, depending on what your margins are and what the lifetime value of a wholesale customer is to you.
Gotcha. And so it would be safe to say that, number of leads doesn't really impact, like it has a factor in it of like you have people that you get to meet, but if I had like 10 great leads versus 50, like maybe it'll work out leads, like.
Yeah. It's tough I think it's easier to judge the value of like a consumer lead, because the consumers are, of course, there's different demographics and different attributes and different reasons people are going to buy your products. But, it's tough to value it just a straight lead, because the buyers are so vastly different. Are they representing 4,000 stores or 4 stores, or, a store that gets 4 customers? Whereas a consumer is like one person that consumes, maybe they're the buyer for a household. And I will say also, the first time I think our first like 3 or 4 shows, we scanned every single person that came by. No, it was just like scan everybody, take notes, and just so I think so. I have close to 18,000 B2B leads in my old CRM, and I would say that 16,000 of them are from the first few specialty food shows where we were just scanning like walking around, like talking to them for 2 seconds and scanning their batch, like we're going to email them, but there was no connection made there. Like we didn't total waste, right? Just clogged us with noise and made it difficult to like actually do the triage and prioritize. So yeah, you only need one good lead from the show to get your return. We had a drive-by from Walmart one year where a buyer came by and said, "Hey, can you get this in 500 stores in 2 months?" And I was like, "Yes." She handed me a card and walked away.
Yeah.
And then I left the show like halfway through and went home and got out a scratch piece of paper and tried to figure out where I was going to make it and how I was going to afford it and if it made sense. And figured it out. And that obviously makes the show very lucrative and a very good return on investment. But we typically would view it from more of the independent and like short to midterm sales.
Okay, awesome. So that's the end of like my formal questions. So Mike, is there like, if there's anything to like, if you want them to walk away with one thing from this entire thing, what would it be? And while you're telling me, I'm going to look at our Q&A to see what else we can cover.
In your voice, stay, unless you're the pushiest person in the world, in your own voice, stay as persistent, more persistent, 2 times, 3 times more persistent than you think you should be. Because you have no idea why they're not answering you. And I think that would, for me, and I don't mean to keep harping on it, but for me, it was such a big, I can't possibly email this person a 3rd time in 6 months. Like that's like crazy. They're probably so busy and I'm not important at all. They came to the show to see you. They came to the show to find the awesome products. They wouldn't have come if they did not want to. They wouldn't have stopped by your booth and let you scan their badge or talk to you unless they wanted you to contact them. And as we all are, they're busy. And if you're not at the top of the attention, at the top of their stack, it's very easy to get lost in the shuffle. So stay persistent. and follow up. And I think I harp on it because it's difficult for me to get into that mindset, or at least it was. Now it's the only way I make money.
Persistence is key. So I do have a couple of questions, and this first one is, how did you decide at the shows who got samples, and how did you measure the ROI versus the cost of the sampling?
So I'm assuming the question means to send samples out post show versus giving them like a taste at the show.
I think we could go both ways. Like,
Okay.
if someone, did you sample you scanned everyone those first few shows, did everyone
Yeah,
get
so everyone got product on a spoon or on a cracker. My rationale for that is every single person there is a potential consumer, and there are certainly buyers who were never going to buy our products. It wasn't right for their store. Who would buy our products online and have them at a barbecue or put them in their pantry. As far as handing out samples at the show, don't do it because they can't take them out anyway. It's not, I think that's a rule. And most serious buyers aren't the ones that are going to, there are very few times that a serious buyer asks me to take a jar or product home from the show. Most of the people that do that are, just looking for, and I would still give it to anyone because, like, I don't know, maybe they're going to take it to the cafeteria and put it, on a sandwich. I don't know what they were going to do with it. But again, they're a potential consumer. But most serious buyers aren't leaving the show with a bag full of goodies. They're not flying home and checking a bag of stuff that's going to break in their luggage bag and have, soy sauce and ketchup and mayonnaise like all over their socks when they get home. So, and as far as who to send samples to post show, I understand that when you're starting out, there is an inventory constraint. It's very difficult to part with something that costs you money and time, especially if you're making everything yourself and you're paying for a commissary kitchen and you already have tight margins. But I can tell you, I know a lot of people who are like, I don't send samples to anyone. If they want it, they can buy it. And none of them are in business. The buyers if it's a specialty store, they oftentimes will take a jar and set it out and do a demo of something they don't even have on the shelves to ask their favorite customers that shop there all the time. They might have only 20 customers that shop there all the time, and everybody else comes in once in a while. They have people that are like, hey, will you buy this? And if they say yes, they'll bring it in. So like that, you have to give them a sample. And then for the larger retailers, they need to see it. They need to go pitch it to their boss. So they can come back. This product was awesome. I never tasted anything like it. And the boss is like, okay, well, what's our margin? What's the case pack? What's it look like? How's it going to look like? What's going to look like on the shelf? How are we going to planogram it? They want to see it and touch it. So I'm very bullish on sending samples out to anyone that asks for those reasons. If you're constrained for some reason, then pick the ones that you think are going to be the highest value for you. I don't know. We have a weird product that no one ever tasted before, and so no one, 30% of Americans will be like, hell yeah, bacon jam. Where's that been all my life? And they'll buy it without trying it.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of people would never ever buy our product without trying it. It's just they haven't heard of it. So for me, you had to do it. It might be different for yours. And if it's a very bespoke product, maybe you get away with, no, sorry, we don't do that. It's too special. And then they'll be like, oh, well, maybe. Oh,
all right.
Okay. That's your strategy.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was like a non-answer.
No. It's totally fine. I'm reminiscing of the first time I tasted bacon jam at, I think it was my first show. So, and it was delicious. So anyone on here likes bacon, Mike's your man. Okay. So then another thing is, how did you continually get better at the show? So post show, how did you guys make a new strategy of okay, this is what we can do at this show? What did that conversation look like?
Yeah.
Your team?
that changed over the years as we like grow and mature as a company.
Mhm.
Not to say that we're mature or anything, but like somewhat a little less naive than the beginning.
There you go.
Our first show, and no knock on anyone that did this, but like we showed up with like banners that we like they might as well have been like hand drawn. And we didn't even our first year we were upstairs. Like I don't know why we picked that spot, or maybe that was all that there was. So we were with like all the serious large brands, and like we literally had like these like banners that we printed out that were like little, I don't know, it just was so janky. But it didn't matter because everyone's like, oh, it's a new brand, it's cool, it's interesting. And it was more about like trying the product. So it was like, sort of seeing what other people were doing, getting a little bit more professional on like the look. But like sometimes you don't want to look professional. Some people go out of their way to look crafty. So like sort of figuring out like how you stand out and like what your voice, like what how that plays into what you're gonna do as far as setup. Um, Also, we would have the conversation when it started to come like for the beginning was like, how are we going to do this logistic wise, sort of figure that stuff out. Oh, I can't bring a hand truck in, what are we going to do, or where we're going to park. And then you start to get comfortable with all like the logistical sides of it, and then you start to I think it was like our third year, like they were like, hey, what are our goals for the show, like like
Yeah.
what are we trying to get out of this, like as opposed to just get leads, just talk to people, like who do we want to see.
Mhm.
Not that you're going to go ambush people in the aisle, but like who are you keeping your eye out for, and what story are you telling at the show about your brand, like what really resonated, and maybe go back through the notes and see like how many people resonated when you talked about one thing versus another. And then like the final conversation was like, should I be in the booth? Like the owner, the guy who's making it, or should it just be our like salespeople? Like, and by salespeople I mean like my mom and like people who like care about the company but like aren't that like they'll know like the top 5 things, and they're not there to tell the whole story. They're just like there to go down the list, hit all the data points. If there's interest there, the lead gets scanned and notes get taken. um there's a point where that is valuable, right? And where but yeah, I guess the conversation after the show was a lot about ROI in the beginning, and then pre-show the following years as we start to mature, like what were our goals, what were our strategies, where did we see success, and how are we going to repeat that. A
Mhm.
lot of like, do we have to print new POS, or is what we have good? I know we've changed 3 things on
Mhm.
there. And, do we want to spend money on printing more materials? How much should we print? How much should we bring? Like counting how much you've returned with, and then figuring out, oh, we didn't need to rent a U-Haul uh, van to set up the show. We could actually do it in a suitcase, because you don't give away 100 jars of the show. I needed
Right.
I needed 3 of each for sampling, and I needed 3 of each for display. Um, that was like a huge. Took us years to like come to that. Like we don't have to bring 100 cases of each SKU to the show. Even after we knew, we still did it.
Good product. Oh man. So then kind of to flip it a little bit on you as a co-packer now, what are you looking for? So when you talk to brands, how do you decide like manufacturers that you want to work with?
Yeah. So when we go to the show now as a co-manufacturer, obviously we try to be respectful of the fact that brands are there to find buyers. If they wanted to find a co-packer, they would be going to like PLMA or a packing show, right? But so typically I'm looking for similar things to what a buyer's looking for, in
Mhm.
that is the product good? Do they have a compelling story? Do they seem like like they understand the basics of the business and would make a good client for us? Because who makes a good client for us? obviously we have capabilities on what we can pack, but similar to the buyers has a set of things that they can buy for their section of the store. So we're looking to see if someone's, ready, or, typically we're not going up to large established brands at the show and saying, hey, do you need a co-packer, because the people that make those decisions aren't in the booth. But with emerging brands, typically, the owner's in the booth, or the people that are making decisions are in the booth. So yeah, we want to see if they're where they're at, what they're currently doing for production, and we ask the same questions that buyers would, and then we would follow up after the show and not try to pitch that at the show. I would say if people are trying to pitch you services at the show while they're at your booth, kindly ask them to move along, because you're there to meet buyers, unless it's slow, it's a lull, it's lunchtime, and your aisle's not busy, and you want to have these conversations. People selling services, or like what I do, politely ask some questions and give a card, and move on. That's what we do, and then follow up if we're interested, and if they seem like they might be interested in what we do.
Awesome. All right. So then the last question that I have right now is a much more technical one. So the actual question is, do you use an Excel spreadsheet to organize your stores? So I'm going to say before you got to like the CRM and like being able to more effectively do it that way, like how are you doing it like grassroots when you were talking to these stores?
Yeah, I mean, that's the first place, right? You pull the data out of the lead generator, or if you hand wrote it and you know how to read your own handwriting. I don't know how to read my handwriting. I don't think any of you do. We would download the CSV and put it in an Excel spreadsheet, clean up the data, especially if we saw that we had because the lead scanner has customizable questions, and whether it's text or multiple choice. Realize that some of the text didn't jive, and sort of clean up that data in a spreadsheet. And then you can certainly use it. I'm not good with Excel or Google Sheets, but it takes me a little bit more time than others. But you can turn it into a workflow thing, right? Where you have your leads and your data points about them, and then have drop downs for where you are in the workflow. Have they been contacted? Did they set up a meeting? Were they qualified? Are they interested? Did they request samples? Did they receive samples? Did they like samples? Those are things that you can be set in, with little drop down cells that let you move people along, and you can make your own CRM, that way, or your own Monday.com or whatever type of system. I'm not personally technically savvy enough to do it because I'm dumb.
Not dumb.
I cook food and sell food.
Very good food though. So, but awesome. All right. Well, Mike, thank you so much for, letting me pick your brain for the past hour. So I just want to say thank you to everyone else that came to this webinar. And you will be able to find the recording at the end on the Bootcamp webpage. And I'm going to throw that right in the chat so that you can get that when it gets posted. But Mike, seriously, thank you so much. And we'll talk soon.
Christy, Gretchen, everyone, thank you so much for the opportunity, and always a pleasure.
All righty. Bye, Mike.
Ciao.